All right, let's dive right in. If you're gearing up for the UPSC exams, you already know how totally overwhelming the daily news cycle can be. So today, we're completely cutting out the fluff. We're taking all the noise from May 13th and 14th, 2026, and translating it into a high-yield, structured map that ties directly into your GS papers. Let's get started.
Okay, let's quickly map out today's agenda. We're directly connecting 16 crucial news items straight to your syllabus today. We'll kick things off with GS2 Polity and International Relations, then we'll shift gears into GS3 covering economy, agriculture, science, and environment. And finally, we'll wrap up with some direct exam prep, including a solid mains question and a rapid revision.
Let's move straight into our first major block under GS Paper 2. And really, the overarching theme dominating the news cycle right now? A massive institutional trust deficit.
Let's look at a pretty stark contrast. Back in 2017, the static foundation was laid. The National Testing Agency was set up under the Societies Registration Act, basically taking over medical exams to guarantee transparency. But flash forward to the dynamic reality of right now. We're looking at the total cancellation of the 2026 NEET-UG exam after a paper leak affected an unbelievable 22.79 lakh students. This entire mess directly brings the Public Examinations Act of 2024 into play, which strictly criminalizes leaks. And critically, you need to note the delay in implementing the Radhakrishnan Committee's proposal for computer-based testing. The tech capacity just wasn't there for over 22 lakh candidates.
Shifting from education governance over to the 10th schedule, let's track exactly how the anti-defection law was triggered by the recent Tamil Nadu floor test. So, how does this actually play out? Well, the TVK-led government won the trust vote, but 22 AIADMK MLAs actually voted against their whip. So the flow is, the party issues a whip and a faction defies it. Now, do they have 2/3 of the original party for a legal merger? No, they don't. That means the speaker has to make a call. And based on that landmark Sebesh Desai ruling from 2023, the speaker has to look at which group constitutes the real political party outside the House, rather than just relying on the legislature party numbers. Let's do a rapid-fire connection of 4 other critical state events straight to their constitutional roots. First up, in Kerala, coalition dynamics are putting a spotlight on the governor's Article 164 discretion in inviting a leader to form the government. Meanwhile, at the center, the CBI director just got a 1-year extension under the DSPE Act, and this happened amidst dissent from the leader of the opposition, which really highlights the ongoing tug-of-war over institutional independence. Down south in Karnataka, the 2022 Uniform Order was revoked, explicitly allowing limited faith-based symbols, completely bringing Articles 25 and 26 on religious freedom back into the conversation. And lastly, in Noida, the National Security Act was invoked against protesting workers, which links directly to Article 22.
And speaking of Article 22, lean in closely for a second, because this right here is a classic prelims trap. The National Security Act is essential law that allows for preventative detention for up to 12 months. But here is the massive catch. Preventative detention is not punitive. It actually does not require proving guilt, and all those standard Article 22 protections, like the right to be informed of the grounds for your arrest or the right to a lawyer, they simply do not apply to preventative detention if the state deems it against the public interest.
Okay, let's step out of domestic polity for a bit and transition onto the international stage for GS Paper 2 International Relations.
We are watching 2 massive geopolitical shifts play out globally right now. First, the Xi-Trump summit over in Beijing. China is currently anchoring a massive 80% of Iran's oil exports. And analysts, they're watching what looks like a total repeat of the Nixon-Mao 1972 playbook. China is basically using the Iran crisis as leverage to extract concessions from the U.S. And why does this matter to us? Because it directly impacts India's current account deficit, our oil import bill, and it puts the entire IMAC corridor at serious risk. Meanwhile, over in the UK, PM Starmer's facing a major political crisis right around the King's speech. For India, this kind of political instability in the Westminster system directly threatens the timeline of our ongoing India-UK Free Trade Agreement negotiations.
All right, let's shift gears again over to GS Paper 3, focusing on economy and agriculture.
The absolute crucial takeaway here is that the effective import duty on both gold and silver just doubled, from 9.2% to 18.4%. Why would the government do this? Well, it's a direct ripple effect of the West Asia war driving up crude prices. India has to protect its foreign exchange reserves for essential imports, and gold, which is price inelastic and driven by deep cultural habits, is a huge contributor to our current account deficit. Also, make sure you note that this new 18.4% rate includes the Agriculture Infrastructure and Development cess, or AIDC.
I want you to consider this frankly staggering figure, 18.9%. According to the newly released PLFS 2025 survey, which is conducted by MOSBY, by the way, this is the rate of urban female unemployment among the youth. Please, please, keep this straight for your exam. The labor force participation rate, or LFPR, includes people who are actively seeking work. But the worker population ratio, or WPR, only counts those who actually have jobs. That gap between those two metrics, that is exactly where this 18.9% lives.
Rounding out the economy section, let's connect the bigger picture to your static syllabus. In agriculture, the new Kharif MSP was hiked, explicitly targeting returns roughly 50% over the cost of production. This is a direct link to the Swaminathan Commission's C2 cost formula. Then, on the infrastructure front, India just launched the Bharat Maritime Insurance Pool, backed by a massive sovereign guarantee. Why? Because the crisis in West Asia has completely disrupted global supply chains and sent insurance costs skyrocketing, which forced IRDI to step in and secure Indian-flagged vessels.
Moving right along, let's bring science and environment together for our final thematic section in GS Paper 3.
Okay, let's do a rapid science and tech roundup. First up, the IMD is now predicting the monsoon at the sub-district level using an incredible AI called the Mithuna model out of IITM Pune. For agriculture, this is huge. It makes the data highly actionable. Second, the Endocrine Society officially renamed PCOS to PMOS, polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome, because, as it turns out, based on the Rotterdam criteria, cysts aren't actually the defining feature. Moving to biotech, CAR T-cell therapy, normally engineered as living drugs for cancer, is now showing incredible promise in suppressing HIV by targeting viral reservoirs with just a single dose. And finally, a super fascinating evolutionary study shows that snakes actually survived 160 million years ago thanks to a flexible cranium, but they lost their legs due to a specific mutation in the ZRS gene.
But hey, before we leave science and environment, we need to watch out for another classic prelims trap. The India Meteorological Department, the IMD and IITM Pune, they are both under the Ministry of Earth Sciences, not the Environment Ministry. Also, keep in mind that El Niño, which is the warming of the Central Eastern Pacific, typically weakens the Indian monsoon. Do not let the exam trick you on these basic administrative or geographical facts.
All right, we've successfully mapped the syllabus. Now let's move into our final section, exam prep, featuring a highly probable mains question and our rapid-fire revision matrix.
Given the massive focus on the NTA crisis, here is a highly probable GS2 mains question for you to practice. The NEET UG paper leak of 2026 exposed systemic failures of the National Testing Agency. Critically examine the structural reforms needed to restore credibility.
And here is exactly how you should frame your answer. Please don't just list facts. You need to build a compelling narrative around these 4 editorial pillars. Start with the technology gap. Explain why pen and paper failed and the urgent need for computer-based testing. Then move to the accountability gap, specifically the leadership vacuums at the NTA. Explain how this directly leads to a massive trust deficit that undermines the legitimacy of the exams. Finally, conclude by arguing for deep structural reforms, like the ones suggested by the Radhakrishnan Committee, rather than just playing musical chairs with personnel changes.
Now, let's lock all this in with a rapid-fire revision matrix. The NEET crisis links to the Public Exam Act of 2024 for GS2. The AIADMK split is ruled by the Subhash Desai verdict on party whips. The Trump-Xi summit echoes the Nixon 72 playbook, impacting RIR. For GS3, the gold duty hikes heavily involve the AIDC cess to manage our current account deficit. The PLFS employment data comes straight from MOSBY. The MID is using AI for block-level monsoon prep, and CAR T therapy is genetically engineering living drugs for HIV.
We're going to leave you today with this final provocative thought derived from today's analysis. India's examination integrity crisis demands systematic technological upgrades, institutional restructuring, and enforceable accountability, not cyclical personnel changes. True institutional accountability goes way beyond simply firing individuals. It's about building robust systems that cannot be broken. I really want you to think about how this concept applies across your entire syllabus as you dive deeper into your studies today. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll see you in the next explainer.
If you're ready to really practice all 8 mains questions from today's news, and you want to get your hands on prelims MCQs and detailed notes, go ahead and download the complete PDF. Just scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in the description to join our Telegram channel. Keep up the amazing work, stay consistent, and I will see you in the next explainer.